Hello, my name is Randy Godbold. I'm the Florence County Veteran Affairs Officer. And here with me today is a friend of mine, C.B. Anderson, and we're going to be talking about the Dunlap Foundation, the Frank Dunlap Foundation, as a matter of fact. But before we get started with that, I'd like to thank Francis Marion University for giving us the opportunity and the resources to be able to do this video for you today. And I'd personally like to thank Dr. Murphy here at the college and his staff for all that his staff does for the veterans in our area. Now, CB, tell us a little bit about the Dunlap Foundation.
The Dunlap Foundation is a 501c3 not-for-profit. It's designed to provide military uniforms for honorably discharged veterans when they have passed and the family knows that that veteran wanted to be buried in a uniform but for some reason has either misplaced or lost their uniform to whatever reason, moth destruction or whatever. Hopefully a uniform can be provided for that veteran to be buried in.
Right. Okay, so this guy, he was one that had passed away and he wanted to be buried in a uniform, and as I understand, you had to go out and get a uniform for him, correct?
Yes, this started, I met Frank Dunlap, which the foundation is named after. I met him probably three and a half years ago. He lived at Little River, which is down at Cherry Grove Beach. He was a World War II Army Air Corps veteran. Actually was a POW, survivor of the Bataan Death March. Mr. Frank, as everyone affectionately called him around the beach, he knew he was in bad health. He knew his time was near and he was going to pass away. A friendly old sort. Anybody that met him liked him. But anyway, he knew he was going to pass away, and he started asking some friends if they could maybe locate a uniform. He had lost his, didn't know where, just misplaced it, and over the years couldn't find it. But he knew his time was at hand, and that was near and dear to his heart, was to be buried in his uniform. And I used to ask him, well, Mr. Frank, why do you want to be buried in a uniform so bad? He said, well, CB, he said, with all my friends that I lost in Bataan, when I get up there with the Lord and them, if I'm not in my uniform, they won't know who I am. He said, I've got to have a uniform to be buried in. So when the call first came to me, which was through a friend of his, I said, Mr. Frank, you know, I really can't make a promise, but the only promise I can make is that I'll work on it. I'll see what I can do. So I simply put out an email to my local veterans list and assured them through my credentials that everything was on the up and up, and that we needed an Ike-style World War II uniform, which is very difficult to find anymore, especially in good condition, and asked them to forward this to their email list, which is what happened, and little did I know it was going to become a full-time job. In about a week, and I still work full-time. I come home in the middle of the day where I have a few hours, and I was at the computer for those few hours or on the telephone. I'd go back to work in the afternoon. When I got home late afternoon, I had more phone calls, more emails. It was a full-time job for months. Try to make a long story short, his military records had been lost due to the fire in St. Louis. I had to get a congressman involved to get the records reconstructed because I knew the man was close at hand. His death was close. So I got the congressman involved to kind of expedite things. Everything was sent to me. Of course, he signed the necessary forms so that I could handle everything. All his paperwork got reconstructed. We were finally able to get the paperwork proving that he was indeed a POW, survivor of the Bataan Death March. And by virtue of that, he was made an honorary Rolling Thunder member as well, once we had the documents. Also, we ordered his medals and ribbons, since all of that had been lost with his uniform. Everything sent to me. Long story short, someone in Tennessee called me and had located a uniform. And over time, it still took some time to acquire the uniform, and it was mailed directly to me, and I immediately cleaned it and pressed it. The man in Tennessee went a lot of steps further. He came here. We wanted to make this a formal presentation. The man in Tennessee was in the flag business. He had a special flag made with 48 stars, which is what Mr. Frank had served under. This flag was made large enough to drape his coffin with if he so chose at the time of his death. As I said, we bought, and the government also sent us his ribbons, but the ones that weren't sent that we knew he was deserving of, we bought them. The man, and I'm drawing a blank on his name right this minute, but I think I will be able to remember it soon, came from Tennessee, put the ribbons and the medals and the pins and everything on his uniform the night before the presentation. I had already ordered all of his patches and had them sewn on the sleeves where they were supposed to be. The only one missing was his unit patch. And I have a lot of websites that reconstruct the old World War II patches, but this one could not be found. That's the only thing he was going to be without. But anyway, we orchestrated this through the mayor of North Myrtle Beach, and the 173rd Airborne was having their homecoming at the same time, so they just made us a part of their homecoming. And Mr. Frank was presented his uniform on stage in the Horseshoe at North Myrtle Beach, with the streets closed down and the 173rd Airborne there who did their jumps, landed on the beach. We had the paratroopers, we had Rolling Thunder with the motorcycles, a huge event. People everywhere. We had Patriot Guard holding flags. And Mr. Frank could do nothing but cry through the whole ceremony. But anyway, we brought him up on stage and he put just the jacket on. This is in the middle of June. I mean, it's like 100 degrees. But he did put the jacket on and recited something from MacArthur, and was a very happy man. And also the former captain from Tennessee who acquired the uniform went even a step further and had a huge shadow box made, and it was decorated with all of Mr. Frank's ribbons and medals, and went steps beyond that. The glass on the shadow box was etched with the Bataan Death March Trail on it, and also some brass plaques in the shadow box which showed Mr. Frank's credentials, Sergeant, POW, so forth and so on. But after all the hoopla and the festivities, a few weeks later, I got another letter from the congressman's office. We had tried desperately to get the combat infantry badge awarded to Mr. Frank, because when he went to the Philippines, he was supposed to load ordnance on the airplanes. But the planes had been sent to Australia. So when the Japanese invaded, these ordnance folks now were made provisional infantry to try to defend Bataan. Of course, they were overrun, as history tells us, and became POWs, and with the forced marches, many of them were shot down. But he was not entitled to the combat infantry badge because he was not attached to a combat infantry unit. Therefore, in 1962, because of his combat service, he was awarded the Bronze Star, which he never knew anything about. It had never been presented. So this was just something else to keep this man living for, and I called him one day, Mr. Frank, you're getting something else, and you got to come out to the VFW this Sunday. It's a Rolling Thunder meeting, and you got to wear your uniform. And Mr. Frank had an old gravelly voice, and he said, "Why are you doing this for?" Well, yeah, y'all already did too much. But anyway, what he didn't know, that I had already contacted an active duty commander, and I wanted this done in the true fashion that he deserved. So he came to our Rolling Thunder meeting at the VFW at 10804 in Little River on that Sunday, and this active duty commander awarded him his Bronze Star. So there Mr. Frank was in tears all over again, thinking that everybody was stumbling over themselves doing things for him. He was a very humble man. The only way he could accept anything that we did for him, which he was so deserving of, was he accepted everything on behalf of all military and all of his friends who had passed on before him. He'd never accepted anything on his own behalf. And pretty much that's how the Dunlap Foundation got started.
Well, that's some good stuff.
He and I had conversations afterwards many times, and he said, CB, he said, you guys went together, you helped me get a uniform, you did more, I received more than I ever thought I would have, and I'm tickled pink over it. But I would like to see other veterans that are going through the same thing I did, that really wanted to be buried in a uniform and it got destroyed or lost or whatever over time. If they feel as strongly about it as I did, I'd love to see a uniform presented to them as well when they die. And he said, is there any way we can do this? I said, well, Mr. Frank, I don't know. Like I told you before, the only promise I can make you is I will try. And I said, since you thought of this, let's call it the Frank Dunlap Foundation. Well, you don't have to do that, but you know, I just want to get it done. I said, well, I think it'd be very appropriate since it's your idea. So that's how the Frank Dunlap Foundation got started. At the time Mr. Frank received his uniform, he was almost 88 years young. He lived until he turned 89, and he's now passed away, buried in his uniform. And that brings me back to the fact of him not having his unit patch. Mr. Frank and his family were kind of distant because of family problems like we all have. But they were invited to the uniform presentation. Not only he get his uniform, but it brought his whole family back together. They saw how much this man was appreciated and adored in the community where he lived, and people were constantly trying to get to know him and be friends with him and do for him, because he'd done so much for our country in the past. He'd suffered so much. But his son, after this, went home, started digging through the attic because he thought he had his dad's old jacket. And he did find it and brought it to him. Of course, it was full of moth holes big as 50 cents in some cases, and most of his ribbons had been pulled off or destroyed or lost. But his unit patch was intact, 27th Bombardment Group. So knowing the people that I do in that industry, I begged Mr. Frank to let me remove that patch, and I could get it reconstructed and put it on his new uniform. And because, you know, I had done so much, he said, sure. And I said, Mr. Frank, you will get it back. I'll promise you, you will get this patch back. Well, I'm not worried about that. So I sent it off, got it reconstructed. But he passed away 2 days before he saw this patch. And I was very honored that the family allowed me, when I went to the funeral, I went immediately to the funeral home when I got to the beach. And since the uniform was already on him, we had to use Velcro to attach his unit patch. But when he left this world, he had everything on his uniform that he was deserving of and entitled to, because I placed his unit patch on his shoulder. And he was a good man. He could talk about the problems he had as a captive by the Japanese, but he could do it without hate. He loved and appreciated all veterans, and he would always say that anything that was bestowed upon him was on behalf of all veterans. He accepted nothing on his own behalf. He accepted on behalf of all veterans. He was that kind of a person.
That's good stuff.
His son and I have since talked since Mr. Frank has passed away, and he actually wanted to see the foundation started as well. I assured him we would do everything we could. Dr. Murphy here at the college has helped me greatly establishing this 501c3. At this point, we do not have the paperwork back in our hand, but we are registered with the Secretary of State in South Carolina. We are a not-for-profit under the name of the Frank Dunlap Foundation. I do have a federal ID number. All the 501c paperwork has been mailed to the IRS. We're just waiting on our acceptance letter to be returned to us, or jump through the hoops as the IRS would require in order to do what we've got to do to finish it up. But I feel sure it's going to go through on the first attempt. As I was saying, Mr. Frank's son and I have talked since his death, and he wanted to see it get off the ground as well. He wanted to do something in his dad's name. So when it came time to file the 501c paperwork, Mr. Frank's son, Ben, paid the IRS fees. Good. And once we get the acceptance letter back, I'm not going to say here how much, but he's going to make a sizable donation. to get this off the ground, because to do something like this, there will be cleaning fees when uniforms are donated, to clean the uniforms, to store them, especially if we get any of the World War II uniforms. They got wool in them, and there has to be moth preventatives to keep them from getting destroyed. And that's the biggest thing at this point, is if anyone has a uniform that they know they're not going to use, I would greatly appreciate it being donated to the Frank Dunlap Foundation. As I said, we are a not-for-profit. We can give you a receipt if you need one. It would be a tax-deductible item. Or if you would like to make a monetary donation, we are willing to accept that as well, because there will be fees involved. I'm sure we'll have to travel from time to time to carry a uniform to a veteran's family. Will be storage fees for keeping these uniforms, cleaning fees, lots of things involved that the normal person wouldn't think of. So we will be needing money. We will do fundraisers as we move along. So the biggest thing at this point is I need uniforms. If you've got them or know of someone that has one that they would like to donate, please call me. My number, I think, will be on the website, but just in case, it's 346-2123, which is my home number. Please call before 9 p.m. because I do work. I have to get up early in the morning. And also keep in mind that if your loved one was a veteran and they have passed away and they wanted to be buried in a uniform, contact me about that as well. At this point, we don't have uniform. We only have 2 or 3. So we're very limited to what we could donate at this point. But hopefully all of that will change. We're going to try to run this operation out of Florence for the time being. Once it expands, I would love to see it expand to the Little River area because that's where Mr. Frank lived. And eventually maybe go statewide. But when we reach that point, I'll have to ask the veteran service organizations to help me collect and store, but they can distribute as well. And everything is legit. We got paperwork for everything. We have a board of directors. I'm not the sole say-so in this operation. I have a board of directors, and they guide me and tell me what has to be done or suggest what we need to do to keep it going in the fashion it needs to go in. But for everyone that ever knew Mr. Frank, you know he was a sweet man and a wonderful person. And, you know, I don't know what else I could say about him.
Yeah. So whenever they're out there cleaning out their closets and getting rid of these old things, you're the man to see.
Yes.
And like he was saying, the web page is www.florencecountyveteranaffairs.com. I know it's long, and leave the S off the veterans and put the S on the end of affairs, and you got it. And his organization number will be on there on how to get in touch with CB, and all the other organizations in the PD area are on there too. Now, do you use the money for the storage and stuff like that? I like to let everyone know that the reason that you're using the 501c is for the storage of the uniforms, the cleaning of the uniforms, the transportation of the uniforms, and there may be times, like you said, where you have to go out and buy some things too, correct?
That's correct. If I know where uniforms are at a reasonable price, we will from time to time buy some, just so we'll have them in storage. And to give you one instance, I've already had a request for an Air Force uniform, which was out of Dillon. I did not have the correct size, so they declined on it. Mm-hmm. But if I had had the right size, I would have gotten in my vehicle and met the county Veterans Affairs officer from Dillon at some point to give him the uniform, or that veteran's family, either one, which would have been an expense to me, which I don't mind sometimes. I mean, all of us that work with veterans, from time to time, we do things out of our own pocket. That's right. But we can't always do it out of our pocket. So it'll mainly be used for storage, cleaning, because if we present a uniform, we want it clean. From time to time, we may try to provide the normal and usual medals and ribbons, but I'm hoping that the family will take care of that. I'm going to start working through one of the companies that sells ribbons and medals and see maybe if they can work a deal with families, if nothing else, but maybe expedite, like overnight with ribbons and medals. And if need be, we'll do like we did with Mr. Frank. We'll attach things as much as possible with Velcro if it's too late to have them sewn on. And there again, could be some sewing expense involved.
That's right.
Sewing patches on. We take no money for ourselves. What we do, and Randy, you know as well as I, with what we do in the community, we take nothing.
That's right.
And I'm not talking of myself. There's me, there's you, there's Dr. Murphy, a lot of Dr. Murphy's students, there's other folks in this community, many veterans that go out there and do things. And we never ask for anything in return.
That's right.
I was not a combat veteran, but I was a veteran. I was in Korea during the Vietnam era. And because I didn't see combat, I guess that's kind of what makes me do as much work as I do for veterans. And I'll continue to do it until I drop. But mainly it being a 501c is so that if someone wants to donate money, or if they want to donate a uniform and use it like a monetary donation on their tax returns, they can. It will be a tax deduction. If you donate a uniform to me, I will sign and date and give a description of the uniform. The amount is up to the individual. That's going to be between you and IRS, not me.
That's right. That's right.
But you will be given a receipt if you want one, and you can use it for a tax deduction. But you know as well as I do, a lot of times people donate things and they don't need the receipt.
Right.
They're doing it out of their heart. They're not doing it for a tax deduction.
That's right. But the biggest thing right now is you need uniforms.
Exactly.
Need uniforms. That's the biggest thing. Get the uniforms to you, and hopefully you don't need them for the other reason.
And one other thing I'd like to add too, and I don't mean this in a bad way. If you really want a uniform to be buried in, please let me know. But don't ask for one just because it's there. If it was near and dear to your heart to be buried in a uniform and yours got destroyed or lost and you need one, please ask for it. We don't mind. It's going to be provided at no charge to the family.
Right.
But all I ask is don't abuse it. That's all I ask.
Okay. All right, well, there's one thing that I'd like to talk about here real quick is we're going to do a little segment here before we close up called Mail Call. And the thing that we're going to talk about today is about the ID cards. Everybody's coming to me all the time about wanting an ID card so they can get a discount at Lowe's or a discount at Home Depot or the Golden Corral's giving a dinner, whoever's doing it at this time. Well, the good news is that it's already passed through all the legislation and it's getting ready to be put on everybody's driver's license. You're going to be able to have it put on your driver's license saying that you're a veteran, so that's going to take care of that. Now, and the other side of the coin on that is that if you're looking for one of these places that give the discounts to the veterans, you can also go to that website, www.florencecountyveteranaffairs.com, and it has a link on there that you can click on, and it lists all the different places in the area that give discounts for veterans. And that's about it for our show today. We got some more shows coming up in the future. We'll have things like the National Cemetery, the Purple Hearts, the DAV, and other organizations on. And I thank y'all for your time.